welcome in everyone to the 10th episode of the Blake and Jake Show on KCOU 88.1. I am Blake Wallace, your host, joined by my co-host and great friend, Jake Aaron.
Hello, hello.
Today is Blake and Jake's first mock draft that you get to see. At this point, I think I've made just about 100. We cover all the hot topics, including a potential trade up for the Vikings, and we foresee a shocking yet successful draft for the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. Don't miss a second of the latest draft. And with the free agency bulk is now in the rear view, this is the most relevant stuff that's coming out. Additionally, I will be participating in a fundraising event called Sports Mania on April 2nd and April 3rd from 4 to 5 a.m. That's right, a.m. because Sports Mania is a 24-hour event, so tune in. But if you find yourself up and on the road or just existing in general at 4 a.m., tune in to hear a special show with more details coming your way soon. You can find the Blake and Jake Show anywhere you want on Spotify and YouTube. Just got to look up the Blake and Jake Show on Instagram. It's also the Blake and Jake Show. There's just no spaces there. Today's a huge show. In fact, I don't think we'll have time for many breaks, if any breaks at all. We are going exactly 1 to 32, as I had said earlier, breaking it all down, starting with the Bears, ending with the Super Bowl winning Chiefs. This is going to be super exciting. Many weeks in the work. Jakes, do you have any thoughts before we begin?
Yeah, it's going to be a really, really exciting draft. The actual draft, but our mock draft also. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Jake, you're the one who goes ahead and starts us off. So whenever you're ready.
All right, with the first pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select.
They select quarterback Caleb Williams, USC. The Bears get their next quarterback prospect, offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, pairs Williams with Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift, and tight end Gerald Everett. The Bears have not had this strong of a quarterback prospect in some time. In fact, I believe Jay Cutler just might be their claim to fame there. This is a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer 2 years ago. It was a no-brainer a year ago. It's a no-brainer now. Caleb Williams goes to the Chicago Bears, and that goes to our very second pick.
All right, with the second pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Washington Commanders select
quarterback Jaden Daniels from LSU. This is a little bit of a controversial pick. I would say this is where the draft truly begins. Last year, Daniels over Drake May would have been crazy. Putting another quarterback not named Caleb Williams before May in this draft would have been ludicrous. Daniels did about everything he could in about 1 year, though, to make up that gap, including winning the Heisman and having one of the most prolific LSU offenses really known and really only comparable to Joe Burrow's LSU run there. And this year, I expect the draft, and especially the studying of these two quarterbacks, I expect their processing power to come into a lot of the conversations. And it's just an area where I think Jaden Daniels succeeds. I think it's a big topic, especially last year with CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, and the topic about the Wonderlic score. You know, CJ Stroud failed that, yet apparently has been seeing NFL defenses his entire life because he looks like a pro out there, like a 10-year vet just in his first season with the Texans. This year, I expect that to be over-critiqued, over-analyzed. That's why I think Kingsbury ends up going with possibly what he believes is the most cerebral and ready to run his offense in Jaden Daniels right there at the number 2 pick. This pick, go ahead.
All right, with the third pick in 2024 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select.
Got ahead of myself. Quarterback Drake May, North Carolina. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, the Patriots should be ahead of themselves, all right? Because as far as quarterback prospects go for the place that you are playing at, you think about the Patriots, it's cold weather all the time up there. You've got to be able to be a strong quarterback and able to get all those throws in there. That's something that is exactly the physical traits of Drake May fit the Patriots to a T. It's almost like exactly what they would need at the quarterback position. A strong arm thrower of the football. He's going to be able to gun in a lot of these throws, and really he's going to be able to add a mobile element as well to that new coaching staff that's just going to really need some running power there. So I think Drake May goes to the Patriots. I think that's a win-win-win. The first 3 quarterbacks off the board, that's big there, and that moves us into our very 4th pick.
All right, with the 4th pick in 2024 NFL Draft, The Arizona Cardinals select.
This is going to be another crazy point here. And I think a lot of people are going to be a little bit unhappy with this, but I've seen enough. I think I've seen enough to go ahead and put wide receiver Malik Nabers from LSU as the pick for the Cardinals. And this is slotted in almost entirely across the board as Marvin Harrison Jr. early on. And we've seen throughout the scouting process this start to slowly overturn. We hear one or two words, but really I try not to listen to a lot of the noise. You don't know the smoke from the fire. Except for Chris Sims. Chris Sims is one of the guys that I really pay attention to because I know he studies the game individually. He doesn't pay attention to what other people are doing. It's completely off his eye test, his evaluation. And then when you compare that to him getting on his Twitter and Daniel Jeremiah tweeting underneath him saying, hey, I've seen a lot of these NFL teams draft boards, and a lot of them have Malik Nabers over Marvin Harrison Jr. as well. Now, let's break that down in itself. It doesn't really matter what a lot of these NFL teams have on their number 1 and number 2 draft boards for receivers because neither of these guys are going to fall very far. So for about 20 teams in the NFL, it really doesn't matter which boards Daniel Jeremiah was looking at. It really matters here at 4. Is the Arizona Cardinals, are they going to go with kind of the pro quo, and they do like their names, and Marvin Harrison Jr., it's a solid pick. Nobody would bat an eye, but then Malik Nabers from LSU. At every point, he seems to stand out, so we're going LSU here.
All right, with the 5th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select.
Yes, and this is where you should bring up the trade because this is the one trade that we had in our mock draft. We have the Vikings trading the 11 and the 23rd pick for the Chargers' 5th pick. Now, why does this work? The Chargers want to move down. They want to get some players, some more value off that 5th pick. And the Vikings almost so clearly want a quarterback. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think they want a quarterback. They trade up. Now, they're going for likely QB4 here. And if you're going to trade 2 picks for a QB4, you have to think there has to be something special about that QB4. That's why they pick Michael Penix Jr., goes to the Minnesota Vikings from Washington, cold weather to cold weather. I just think that Michael Penix Jr. is special. I don't know if the other guy's still available. Bo Nix, just to add a few names there. I don't think that these players add that kind of special, over-the-top, just unique ability. And yet Penix has that unique ability. So when I think about a quarterback that people expect to be traded up for, I don't really think of J.J. McCarthy. I think of Penix Jr. and his ability to throw with, and I'm going to bring up Chris Sims here, promised this last time, but I love the way he described it because I struggled to describe what Penix does at such an elite level and maybe even a unique level is his ability to throw with leverage, to see things before they are. Things are falling into pockets, over defenders you don't see wide open. He has that ability kind of in that you want to be throwing in that 8 to 15 yard range, really, with Michael Penix because that ball could sail over a defender's head when a defender's right behind the receiver and a safety's bearing down from the deep end. It's something that I think just Penix does at an elite level, even if you compare him to NFL talent. That's why I think if you're talking about the Vikings trading up for a quarterback after the first 3 are gone, it's for Michael Penix Jr.
All right, with the 6th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select.
This is fun. And the Giants now are not at all too beat up about Malik Nabers falling because, the second best wide receiver just happens to be Marvin Harrison Jr. They would have liked to have Malik Nabers. And I think at this point, the fit with Malik Nabers is more seeable because especially losing Saquon Barkley, that offense almost has nothing that scares a defense. And Malik Nabers and what Daboll could do with him and his explosiveness, it makes me salivatate a little bit more. I just, as an offensive guy, I just get a little bit more interested with Daboll and Malik Nabers. But Marvin Harrison Jr. is a bona fide one in this league, and then it comes down to that battle for the Giants. You still have Joe Alt on the board. You can get an offensive tackle. They have Thomas still. So, you get a tackle, you have your tackle solidified for a long time. Or you get Marvin Harrison Jr., you pair a quarterback that is possibly overpaid, a little underskilled for what he was paid for and what's expected from him, and you now give him a wide receiver by any rookie standards will be underpaid. And maybe you find something that works in that offense. I like the wide receivers for the Giants as 2s and 3s. If you get that one, what does this offense become? I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is a great fit.
With the 7th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select
offensive line, Joe Alt from Notre Dame, 6'9". The man's a beast, and one of those kind of plug-and-play guys you just don't feel like has any chance for a bust. And, of course, there always is. Some of these guys just, maybe it's the footwork, maybe it's injuries. Usually injuries get the guys that are kind of this level. But Joe Alt is one of those guys, and we're going to knock on wood here, that just could be a 10, 15-year guy. And the Tennessee Titans need that right now. It's a fantastic no-brainer pick at that number 7 slot. And you just lost Bill Callahan, possibly one of the greatest offensive linemen coaches there are. So have a no-brainer, solidify that O-line, then focus elsewhere later in the draft. I think this is a perfect spot for Joe Alt at number 7.
With the 8th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft,
there it is.
The Atlanta Falcons select.
They select, and this is fun, defensive tackle Byron Murphy, Texas. And I know you're thinking, come on, this is like the 3rd surprise and 9 picks. Like, what are you doing? But I don't think this is too much of a surprise. The Falcons have their quarterback, and now they got to get players to get opposing quarterbacks. The Falcons appear like they have very little in pass rush capability on the roster, and new head coach Raheem Morris has benefited greatly from the Hall of Fame interior rush of recently retired Aaron Donald with the Rams and 2 times Pro Bowler Gerald McCoy with the Buccaneers before that. I wanted really badly to pair Rome Odunze and Kirk Cousins, and I think that there are going to be a lot of members in that Falcons organization that want to do the exact same thing. It's tantalizing. It does make you salivatate a little bit. I'm going to stop using that word now. I don't know why that became the special word of the day. It's not exactly what I thought it would be, but yeah, I think you've got to consider Rome Odunze here, but Byron Murphy causes such a wrecking presence inside. There's only a few of these guys in the draft. There won't be any by the time the 2nd round comes, and I think that's got to be Raheem Morris's first thing, is to stop the run, get Byron Murphy. He does that. He also creates the pass rush.
All right. With the 9th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select.
I'll be honest, I think this is a big trade down spot. The Chicago Bears only have 4 draft picks in this entire draft. And so having that 1 pick, getting exactly who you want, you should consider trading down at this position. If not, we're just going to say for this meeting, they're not trading down. I think at this point, you have no qualms taking the best defensive end on the board and saying, we'll wait now until pick 75 or whenever to pick next. So I guess they get to take a long break off. That front office might be lazy. Maybe they're just thinking like we can get a whole 3.5 hours out, come in late, get an early breakfast and a good lunch. No, I'm just kidding. Dallas Turner from Alabama. I think one of the most unquestioned pass rushers. The other ones, I do have questions for each one, but Dallas Turner is going to be the last, and we're gonna have this conversation a lot. The last defensive end coming out of a Nick Saban led program. I think that means something to somebody. Dallas Turner, Alabama, Chicago Bears. Fantastic pick, by the way.
With the 10th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select.
They've got to select somebody on the offensive line, right? Yeah, they do. No more surprises here. I've got offensive tackle Olu Fashanu, Penn State. Now, I like this move because Fashanu's a guy that is a little bit of a project, but the Jets need help everywhere. So the possibility to stick him at guard is there for a talent like Olu Fashanu. But to be honest, the Jets have made some moves a little bit on their offensive line. Not enough to go away from it in this first round, especially with the talent that's here versus the talent they'll see later on in this draft. You must go offensive tackle. Olu Fashanu fits somewhere, I feel, on that Jets offensive line. It's up to the Jets to figure out where.
With the 11th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chargers select.
The Chargers select, and this is the first traded pick from the Vikings, right? And if you ask me what were the Chargers going to do had they not traded that 5th pick, who were the player that they were going to select? I would have said 1, Joe Alt. I think I would have said 2 Brock Bowers. Well, guess who's still on the board? It's Brock Bowers. Still there for the Chargers. That is the first of one of huge big wins there for the Chargers there. They get Brock Bowers and move along the draft.
With the 12th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select
quarterback, J.J. McCarthy from Michigan. Now, right now we're on 5 quarterbacks taken. That's a counter that we should keep track of. I do feel like the Denver Broncos are almost forced into this pick somehow, if that makes any sense at all. Think about the kind of boost that J.J. McCarthy has been given, all the way to considered really just being right behind in that tier right behind the 3 quarterbacks, May, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams. And that came after the season, right? That came all like post combine is when we started to see this rise. I don't know if Sean Payton will be as sold on J.J. McCarthy as this rise has been, but here he might just have to take him because the only other quarterback that's considered in like the draftable in the first round is Bo Nix. And, you know, I think of the 2, you got to say maybe I got to get mine now because there won't be any left. Now, can the Broncos do anything else other than select a quarterback right now in the draft to get a quarterback? Because right now I don't think Stidham will be starting. There is a possibility where there is a trade for Tua Tagovailoa. Oh, wow. Messed that up. Tua. We're just going to go Tua. And I think there's a possibility that there's a trade to the Dolphins there. And that's only if Sean Payton likes Tua enough to say, hey, I want to see if I can get him in a system sort of like I had with Drew Brees. Similar type quarterback, often compared to each other. Many say that the Drew Brees archetype got Tua the job. Well, let's see. That might be a possibility for Sean Payton. It might be a better option short term than any of these quarterbacks, but J.J. McCarthy right here makes sense.
With the 13th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select.
That one was late as well. And this is a big pick for the Las Vegas Raiders. I think they sprint this one up here. Cornerback Quinion Mitchell from Toledo. This is the part where we start talking about where these corners go, right? There's 2 of them that are clearly in a top 2. It's Quinion Mitchell. It's Terrion Arnold. And the Las Vegas Raiders have not had a good secondary since I've been alive. I don't know. It probably has not been that long. I can think back to Charles Woodson, so I don't think so. But it has been some time since there has been more than one notable player in that Las Vegas Raiders secondary. I think it's time to go ahead and get one of them. It's either Terrion Arnold, Quinion Mitchell. It's who each team has on number 1 on their board. Terrion Arnold is the last crop fully developed by Nick Saban. And Quinion Mitchell is a small-town guy with a beastly combine. He's just a freak athlete. Is going to be the kind of guy that fits with the Las Vegas Raiders. I think of like Max Crosby as an insane athlete. I think they love that. Even when they've tried in their secondary moves like Melon Fonwu, they've always had special things. John Abrams is a safety that they picked up a few years back. And I love John Abrams, but a monster hitter, just a thudder out of the backfield. Never quite worked out, but I've liked what they try to go for some dynamic playmakers, some dynamic athletes. That's Quinion Mitchell.
With the 14th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select.
And this one fell into their lap as well. Rome Odunze, wide receiver out of Washington, expected to go quite early. In fact, maybe in the top 10, slips just a little bit to pick 14, and then suddenly you're just not so angry anymore if you're Rome Odunze, because it kind of all makes a little bit of sense. Think about the Saints. The last great wide receiver that they had, I think of Michael Thomas. And Michael Thomas was a big body receiver. Wasn't the fastest guy in the field, but could do things well. And then I think back to Derek Carr, the Saints quarterback. And I think back to Las Vegas and having Devontae Adams and how great that was for Derek Carr. And then I can see this Rome Odunze matchup. I wanted him with Kirk Cousins because I feel like you can build a rapport with a big, talented receiver like this and make waves early. Well, I think the same goes for Derek Carr and the Saints.
With the 15th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select.
We talked about him already. The other cornerback from Alabama, Terrion Arnold. Now, this is just needed. Once one went, the other was bound to go soon because, like I said, many are going to see these two as very close, like 1A, 1B, but there's a clear 2 from these two. So right now, you're talking about being in the 15th pick. You see one go, 2 picks before you. You're kind of clinching a little bit as New Orleans picks. They've always had a history of picking really good cornerbacks. So you're worried. They pick Rome Odunze. Good for them. That's a very talented player. And now the Indianapolis Colts say, here you go, with a breath of fresh air, a little bit of a relief. And Terry and Arnold, Alabama is just a solid pick. Like I said, the last and the best corner of the last crop of Nick Saban's. That's a big deal. Now, what else could Indianapolis do here? You could talk about going offensive line, but their offensive line's pretty good here, and they have a real need at cornerback. Picking Terry and Arnold is not a mistake here for the Indianapolis Colts at pick 15.
With the 16th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select
offensive tackle Talisi Fuaga from Oregon State. Now, when I was trying to evaluate the Seahawks, and you've got Mike McDonald there, I considered Jerzon Newton for a long time. Defensive line, that's a great place to go. He is kind of how we talked about those corners just there, is how people should see the defensive tackles. It's Jerzon Newton and it's Byron Murphy, and there's not that big of a gap, but there is a gap to what other teams are looking for in a defensive tackle. Yet, when you're looking here, offensive line just feels like the right way to go, and Fuaga is a guy that can help right away. And I don't expect Mike McDonald to be wanting to wait around to try to get an offensive line right, to get an offense going. He wants to get the offense going because he knows he can take care of the defense. That's why I see Talisi Fuaga going to the Seattle Seahawks in Mike McDonald's first year.
With the 17th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select
The Jacksonville Jaguars select inside offensive line Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. Maybe a little late for Jackson Powers Jr. to go off, or Johnson to go off. Maybe a little early. But this is a big pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars, getting a big offensive lineman that can really start that run game, because that is how Trevor Lawrence is going to succeed the most, right? Haven't been able to get a successful run game that is able to bust off big runs while still gaining consistent yards. It feels like, they can go out there. The Jacksonville Jaguars can go out and run on a team, or they can go out there and get 50 yards in 20 attempts or 15 attempts and 10 attempts, and they'll quit. But I think when you get Jackson Powers Johnson, I think that changes. I think that's a big change, and I think you get much better running the ball when you select somebody like that, and that's a great pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
With the 18th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select my favorite tackle personally, offensive tackle Troy Fautanu out of Washington. Now, when I say favorite tackle, it's really hard to evaluate Washington as a whole last year because they were so successful. And there's so many players that are in this draft because of it. You think 3 wide receivers, 1 quarterback. We're talking about an offensive tackle right now. You will see many more Washington players get drafted in day 2 and day 3. And you've just got to break down who was the most reasoned for success there. Who made the most success happen? And Troy Fautanu was one of those pass defending offensive tackles that I mean, best pass blocker there is, but in my opinion, but the run blocking isn't so bad in itself that you can't see. His measurables fit up exactly how I thought they would. I think that was what many people were waiting on. Now, is there an injury history? I don't really think there's an injury history that should be stopping Troy Fautanu to be drafted higher than what many people. I've seen 21, 24, 26. Troy Fautanu is too good for that. Troy Fautanu is going earlier. He's going at pick 18 to the Cincinnati Bengals, and they're high-fiving over there. That's a fantastic pick. With the 19th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft,
Los Angeles Rams select.
We've talked about it. I was going to forget that at one point in time. I want to go back real quick and talk about the Cincinnati Bengals one more time and the Titans. Bill Callahan went from the Bengals to the Titans. So the Titans now are getting Joe Alt for Bill Callahan to work with. It's interesting. Now, I do think Cincinnati Bengals win by picking Troy Fautanu later in this draft. Both of them get offensive tackles, despite one team losing a offensive line coach that is among the most legendary still active. All right, with the 19th pick, as you had said, the Los Angeles Rams select cornerback Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. Now, this is one of those home run picks that wouldn't have been a home run pick for many other teams, but specifically for the Los Angeles Rams, who have the worst secondary last year. Just focusing on last year alone, if you were to ask me, first or second worst secondary in the league, and they need fixes really at every position. There needs to be a lot of competition, and the Rams secondary coming into training camp. One way that you booster your team in some sort of way right now, you may not even know right now. Maybe you're not so sure if you're the Rams. Maybe it's been a long offseason. Maybe you're just feeling not quite ready to get into the thick of the draft. If you pick Cooper DeJean out of Iowa right now, he fits somewhere on that roster immediately as a starter. It might be at safety. You'll have to figure that out. But somewhere along that secondary, there's a fit for Cooper DeJean.
With the 20th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select
corner Nate Wiggins, Clemson. And this is a run of corners here. It started at 15 when Terrion Arnold went with the Indianapolis Colts, and it's really starting to end here. But you're going to see it's kind of a mix. Offensive tackles, you're going to see this as well, where both of these guys is kind of going to be, I want that corner, I want that offensive tackle, corner, offensive tackle. Wait, all the corners and offensive tackles are now gone. And so that's why I see this transitioning here. Cooper DeJean, and then I think Pittsburgh says, hey, we like Nate Wiggins. A little bit smaller in stature than people are saying, but got bigger at his pro day, was right around 180, 182 pounds. It's a little bit more. It's still a little small, but it's what people wanted to see. But I don't know. Pittsburgh's had like Joe Hayden, I think of. And they've had more shorter corners and have been fine with it. I don't think they see this as necessarily a loss, and I think Nate Wiggins is a great pick here. I think it's a match made in heaven, really, at the cornerback position for Nate Wiggins, Clemson, to Pittsburgh Steelers.
With 21st pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select
Miami Dolphins select offensive tackle J.C. Latham out of Alabama. Now, this is like a real contention point right here. And there might be people that are saying that is not the offensive tackle they're going to take. And they're going to even say, hey, why is Amarius Mims still on the board? He is a freak of nature. The guy looks like he could play tight end, which is insane to me. And this really is going to be down to opinion of what's left. And there's going to be teams that are saying, I wouldn't draft Latham before the 20th pick. I wouldn't draft Mims before the 20th pick. And then there's going to be teams that were saying as soon as 10, they're draftable. They're to me, they're their value after 10. And so I think here, just breaking it down, I think it goes Latham. I think Latham's just a better seamless fit here. So if you're talking about transition and wanting to make that easier, I think you go J.C. Latham over Mims here, but I think that's going to be a huge kind of contention there when there's two offensive tackles on the board and the Miami Dolphins are selecting.
With the 22nd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select
cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. Are they forced into this pick? Absolutely not. Do they need a cornerback so bad it might just make them take Kool-Aid McKinstry? It is, because I mean there's some concerns with Kool-Aid McKinstry, his physicality and everything that they're. I mean that's a tough division to be worrying about a lack of physicality, but sometimes at the NFL game, there's going to be a cornerbacks coach that's going to say, let me work with him. We're going to get that figured out. That's not a problem for me. And he certainly has, the Kool-Aid McKinstry has the build to step in and play right away. And that's why I think right here, the Philadelphia Eagles, they need a ready-to-play corner. Kool-Aid McKinstry, when we're talking about last batch, Terrion Arnold's already off the board. This is your last chance to get a Nick Saban-led corner here, and it goes right here at pick 22.
With 23rd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chargers select.
We talked about this before. Remember, in pick 11, the Chargers select Brock Bowers. Everybody's talking. Even now, if you listen to any of the other mock drafts, they're going to say, hey, the Chargers, they want to beef up the offensive and defensive line. That's why this pick's going to be shocking. The wide receiver, Brian Thompson Jr. from LSU. And suddenly you're saying, what? The Chargers were supposed to get Joe Alt, or a defensive player, to stop the run game. But no, instead, you get value finding what a lot of people consider to be the best wide receiver product, just without all of the resume to back it up. But so far, physicals, everything you see, he's grading out like a number one receiver should. Yet, with all the talent that's on the board and all the wide receivers before him on the board, there is a possibility that Jim Harbaugh could be, is it Jim or John? This is a brothers thing. Jim. Yeah, Jim Harbaugh could be fallen into two of the best offensive talents in the board after trading back. He takes Brian Thompson Jr., and suddenly you go from, hey, we have one of the most expensive but talented wide receiver rooms, even just pass catching rooms, let's call it that. Then they go through and they shed a lot of that weight. Now you say that's a lot of dead cap money, not a lot of players to play with this year. They're going to have to get somebody. Well, now they bring in Brock Bowers. Now they bring in Brian Thomas Jr., and that's one of the most exciting and eventually cheap backfields you're going to have for a few years, which is going to be fine because you're going to be paying Herbert, and you're going to need a little bit of that money saving to get two very, very talented players if you get Brian Thompson Jr. at 23, which we have them going. Next is pick 24.
With the 24th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select.
Yes, and we've talked already about it 3 or 4 times. I've said a hand and glove fit, but I don't think anything's quite like this, right? Offensive tackle Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. And suddenly it says, duh. Jerry Jones loves his Oklahoma. He's probably watched just every single game of this guy, and he's going to pick him immediately. I said the same thing about the Philadelphia Eagles picking Mims just because he is a Georgia Bulldog rather than any other aspect. But I think this is a great fit as well. You let go of Tyron Smith, who goes to the Jets and helps out Aaron Rodgers, and suddenly you're going to need to fill a hole that's been a hole for a while, right? Hasn't been able to stay healthy throughout a whole season. The Jets themselves are probably not relying on Tyron Smith to stay healthy throughout the season. So now you go get yourself Tyler Guyton, Oklahoma. It's a solid starter. Maybe yet another guy that stays for another 10 or 15 years and continues the tradition of good offensive linemen in the capital of NFL football.
With the 25th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select.
It was only a matter of time. Defensive tackle Jerzon Newton from Illinois. We've talked about this, just like the cornerbacks. Once one goes, it's a matter of time. And slipping down this far might not happen for Jerzon Newton, because once Byron goes, it's Jerzon Newton or nothing in this first round, in my opinion. The Green Bay Packers, this is a fantastic spot for him, but it's also a pretty good spot for Ennis Rakestraw, Missouri's Ennis Rakestraw, or Minnesota's Tyler Nubin. This is not a sexy pick, right? This isn't going to wow anybody after having a pretty good end of the year last year. Maybe there's going to be some fans clamoring to get a wide receiver, which Green Bay never does, or maybe look somewhere else. But when I'm looking at the board here, it almost feels like a crime not to take Jerzon Newton and Ennis Rakestraw. It's like Ennis Rakestraw is like if you had a 28th pick, this might be a better way. But right now, you're at the 25th pick, and I think Jerzon Newton's a slam for that 25th pick.
With the 26th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select.
Possibly the Combine's sweetheart, really, except for Xavier Worthy later on. But you got to go Chop Robinson, edge Penn State. Chop Robinson, and I've already talked about that a little bit. I don't know how I feel. And in this entire evaluation, I don't know how I feel about these defensive ends, because generally all of them are a little small going into the NFL, or a little injury prone. If we're talking about a little bit later on, there's some questions. But for Chop Robinson, he has the most answers as well. That's what it comes down to. Is Chop Robinson is the reason why Michigan decided to run an entire second half. They could not stop him in the first half. So Chop Robinson deserves to have that credit there. He is a game wrecker. Why he wasn't doing that every single game? I mean, Michigan's no slouch, and their tackles are no slouch. So to do that every game in and game out, it just doesn't feel like that should have been that hard for somebody with Chop Robinson to do. And there's questions going into the combine. Yet he goes to the combine and he murders the combine. And suddenly it's like, hey, I could see him going as low as pick 18. But at the end of the day, I just think there's so many good prospects that maybe he gets pushed up the board a little bit. I don't think that's a crime either. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do win this, though, and they get to choose right now. Do I work on offensive line or defensive line? They don't really have a lot of other spots that are to go for here. I mean, if you want to talk about Ennis Rakestraw, again, a good corner, or Lassiter from Georgia, that makes sense to me. But I think that Chop Robinson is just the way to go here. And consistency is the only question to me. That's all I've got to say. It's about consistency with Chop Robinson. If he can be, then I watch out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next year when there's a fight for that division and Tampa Bay might have an upper hand.
With the 27th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select
offensive line, Graham Barton out of Duke. This is the second offensive lineman off the board. No, I don't think there's a clear class in these two. I like Jackson Powers Johnson. I don't mind Graham Barton. I think he's a great pick here. It's a solid pick. I think it should be all about protecting Kyler Murray up there in the front. And it's really just about draft boards at this point. Who's gone that were higher on Arizona's draft board than everybody else, and maybe now they're left with, this or Edrin Cooper from Texas A&M. But really, if you think offense, defense, and that's what I think. I think the only way Edrin Cooper is the pick here over Barton is the fact that maybe they've spent so many resources in the offensive category that the defensive guy gets a little bit of a noise in here and says, hey, get me Edrin Cooper. That guy's a monster. Talk about one of the guys that absolutely showed out at the combine. That would be Edrin Cooper. Also had great play, though, in Texas A&M. Should not sometimes like a great combine, and people say, well, he's just the combine. Well, no, he did what he needed to do in the season. The combine just backed it up for Edrin Cooper.
With the 28th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select
edge Jared Verse, FSU. A little bit of a run here on these edges because I think that all of them have sort of the same concern that they might all fall sort of in the same area. But what should be talked about here is, I look back at the Buffalo Bills drafting history, especially since having Mick McDermott, and you just can't find odds or ends of a plan there at first round pick. You can with some other teams. We're going to talk about one a little bit later. So this pick is a little bit more up in the air. Jared Verse, though, was very productive in college, and that's something I think an older defensive coach like Sean McDermott's going to like. And I think if you get him in an interview room with Sean McDermott, I think these two click. That's why I think, even though Jared Verse, I would now consider maybe even a faller that is a little bit too much here, especially on my draft board. He is a faller, but I think he ends in a good home. Like, that's a win-win. If you end under Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills, you'll be all right.
With the 29th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select
Missouri's own edge rusher, Darius Robinson out of Missouri. Now, this is also the only Missouri player that I have exiting the first round from Mizzou. I have I'm blank Ennis Rakestraw there going second round, and then probably a little later second round if I'm to be honest. But I liked everything I saw from Darius Robinson combine on, and his numbers are great. What the NFL sees from this guy is fantastic, and he doesn't have the problems when we're talking about these other defensive ends. Yes, a little bit different. You got to look at Darius Robinson a little bit different than you look at these guys, but the speed is there, the size is there. It's all in the makings. Now, can you get some pass rush moves? Can you build into what Darius Robinson's game is? And if you ask me a team, it's probably his hometown team, the Detroit Lions. And if you think about that, match him up with Adrian Hutchinson right there. Match them up same side, opposite side. It's a great duo. I think Detroit falls in love with that just as much as I have. And they say, I see that working out as a great 1-2 combo. Go ahead and get Darius Robinson, the monster from Missouri.
With the 30th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens select
linebacker Edgerrin Cooper, Texas A&M. I gave a little preview about him already. There's some interesting wide receivers at this pick, but if you look back, and I'm going to do this now with you, if you look back to the first round picks, I'm going to name some, and John Harbaugh has been there since 2008, so I'll go ahead and start at 2008. Are you ready? 18th pick, Joe Flacco. 23rd pick, Michael Oher. Move on. They didn't have any in 2010. 2011, Jimmy Smith. Move on a little bit more. 2014, C.J. Mosley. Brashad Perryman still in the league. Ronnie Stanley. I'm just running down the list now. Marlon Humphrey, Hayden Hurst, Lamar Jackson, Marquise Brown, Patrick Queen, Rashad Bateman. I mean, all of these guys. Tyler Lindenbaum in 2022 with the 25th. And when are the Ravens ever drafting in the first 20 picks? They're almost never doing it. It's always late round draft picks, and these guys are all great picks. Even some of the ones that you don't recognize so much, they're productive in the league. They're still in the NFL football league. That's insane. To be in the National Football League years after in the first round is kind of like the maybe not the best of the Ravens late round picks. It's insane. They just do so well in picking. They're going to pick the right guy. Whoever the Ravens pick gets the right guy. I think that right guy is Edgerrin Cooper.
With the 31st pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select.
This is where offensive tackle Amarius Mims comes off the board from Georgia. Now, this is a special pick because Amarius Mims fell in my draft. And I think that Amarius Mims will necessarily go this low? It's hard for me to see it. But at the same time, you look at these other offensive tackles, there's quite a bit, and he could easily fall to the back of this list and go here. Now, I think that Olu Fashanu could be in this situation as well. There is an offensive tackle that will fall. There's too many for one not to be discovered. It's kind of the one that's going to be like, quote unquote, the ugly duckling. I'm guessing it's Amarius Mims here. Like I said, I love Amarius Mims, but I do feel like a little bit of a tweener sometimes. Now, he's going to put on weight there, and maybe I'm just super silly. He's going to be the next greatest left tackle since forever. But, I mean, when you look at this draft, one has to fall. For me, it's Amarius Mims. Like I said, it could be Olu Fashanu. It could be Fuaga. Those would be my other two picks. I don't think Troy Fautanu. I would pick Troy Fautanu easily over. But then once you're splitting hairs after this. You're splitting hairs. There's Joe Alt. And then there's Fautanu for me, and then you're splitting hairs. That's offensive tackle, and what a need for San Fran. San Francisco needs to redo their entire offensive line. They put money into that, and it got old, and they need a new set of road graders up there. So that's what they do with the 31st pick. That leaves one more pick. The reigning NFL Super Bowl champs.
With the 32nd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Kansas City Chiefs select.
There is just so much here that we could have done with this pick, right? There's about 5, 6, 7, 9 receivers here. I mean, there's Xavier Legette. Let's talk about that. I mean, if you're trying to go for a wide receiver 1, but maybe get him in the second or third round, a little stiff, but I like Xavier Legette a lot. You talk about Xavier Worthy, who ran the fastest time. Does that attract possibly Kansas City to use that first round pick? It's a late first round pick, so I think that you're a little more comfortable in spending this on a receiver here. That's why I think they do. But I don't think it's any of the wide receivers I mentioned so far. Now, could it be Adonai Mitchell? That's another wide receiver 1 that could be very well spent if you're trying to get a bona fide, traditional big receiver. I don't see that being the route either. For some reason, it just doesn't feel like a Texas wide receiver is going to Kansas City. It does feel like wide receiver Ladd McConkey from Georgia might just be the pick at the end of this. Now, if the Patriots had this pick, it would 100% be Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. But when you talk about the ball skills of Ladd McConkey, it kind of gives me like a mini Travis Kelce feel, where it's like it's such a comfort route running that he understands when to sit in zones, when to move in mans. It's something else. So I think that when you're looking for something to help out Patrick Mahomes, especially as the offense have gotten closer and closer to the line of scrimmage, you give somebody he can pitch a little 8-yard, a little 10-yard, a little 8-yard, a little 10-yard, opposite of Kelce. That could be a dangerous duo. Kind of guys that do maybe the same things, but on opposite side of the fields, giving the Super Bowl champ, possible GOAT here, Patrick Mahomes, another chance at a Super Bowl, the chance to three-peat. It's a big deal. All right, and I think that rounds out our show here. We are finishing just under the time. Thank you so much to listening to Blake and Jake Show. I just want, before I even get into my little closer here, I want to go ahead and say, if you are going to be awake at 4 to 5 a.m., April 3rd, then please tune in for my special show from 4 to 5 a.m. on KCOU 88.1 FM. That'll be for Sports Media. That is a fundraiser now. Haven't quite gotten to the meeting to tell me what that fundraiser is for, but as soon as I do, I'm going to be getting that right back to you guys. But I can promise you a special show. It's going to be an early morning show. There's going to be more jokes because the more miserable I am, the more jokes I crack. That does it for me. That is the 10th episode of the Blake and Jake Show on KCOU 88.1 FM. I invite listeners to be one of our very first followers on our newly created Instagram, the Blake and Jake Show, no spaces. If you only caught part of the show, but not the whole show, or maybe you want to hear the whole show over again, check us out on Spotify and YouTube at the Blake and Jake Show. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks because next week is spring break. You won't be here. You're going to be in Texas, but I will be here. Won't be on air, though. We'll be missing you guys sorely, but I'll see you in 2 weeks for another episode of the Blake and Jake Show, Wednesdays at 2 p.m. on KCOU 88.1 FM. Thank you so much for listening.